When this billionaire's wife walked into Judge Caprio's courtroom wearing a diamond necklace worth more than most people's homes, she made one critical mistake. She laughed, right in the judge's face. What happened in the next 8 minutes would humble her in ways she never imagined. But first, you need to see what she did that made even the prosecutor gasp. This is Victoria Ashford, wife of real estate mogul Richard Ashford, whose net worth exceeds $400 million. She was in Providence Municipal Court for something seemingly trivial, reckless driving and leaving the scene of a minor accident. To her, this was beneath her. An inconvenience. A joke. But Judge Caprio was about to teach her that nobody is above accountability, and the lesson would be delivered in the most unexpected way. 3 weeks before this court appearance, Victoria had been driving her pearl-white Bentley Continental through a working-class neighborhood in Providence. According to police reports, she had been speeding 42 in a 25 zone when she sideswiped a parked 2004 Honda Civic. The Civic belonged to Maria Santos, a 34-year-old single mother who worked double shifts as a nursing assistant to support her 2 kids, ages 7 and 9. Here's where it gets worse. Victoria didn't just hit the car. Security footage from a nearby bodega shows her getting out, examining the scratch on her Bentley's mirror, looking at the damage she'd caused to Maria's Honda, and then getting back in her car and driving away. She didn't leave a note. She didn't call the police. She just left. The entire incident took less than 90 seconds. 90 seconds that would change both of their lives forever. Maria's car was her lifeline. The entire driver's side was caved in. The door wouldn't close properly. The wheel alignment was completely destroyed. The side mirror was hanging by wires. The repair estimate came to $3,800, money Maria absolutely did not have. She filed a police report, hoping her insurance would cover it. But with a $1,000 deductible and the risk of her premiums skyrocketing, she was stuck between a rock and a hard place. For 2 weeks, Maria had to take 3 buses each way to get to work. That meant leaving her house at 4:30 in the morning for a shift that started at 7 o'clock. It meant getting home at 8 o'clock p.m. instead of 5:30. It meant her kids had to stay with her elderly mother, who could barely manage them. It meant missing her son's school play because she couldn't get there in time. It meant exhaustion so deep she'd fall asleep on the bus and miss her stop. Meanwhile, Victoria's Bentley had her custom license plate, Ash FRD1. It took police exactly 4 hours to track her down. When they showed up at her $4.2 million mansion in the East Side, she was genuinely annoyed that they'd bothered her over such a minor thing. Those were her exact words to the officer. Minor thing. The officer later testified that she seemed more concerned about the detective's shoes on her marble floors than the damage she'd caused. When they informed her she'd be receiving a court summons, she actually rolled her eyes and asked if she could just pay a fine right there and be done with it. The detective told her it doesn't work that way. She responded by saying her husband played golf with the mayor and this was all going to be cleared up with one phone call. That phone call never came. Now she stood in Judge Caprio's courtroom, and everything about her body language screamed entitlement. She wore a cream-colored Chanel suit that probably cost $8,000. Designer handbag. Perfectly styled hair that had clearly been done that morning. Her manicure alone probably cost more than Maria spent on groceries in a month. And that dismissive smirk on her face said she had lawyers who could make this disappear with a snap of her perfectly manicured fingers. Her attorney, Martin Hutchins, was one of Providence's most expensive lawyers. He represented CEOs, politicians, and old money families. He'd already filed 3 motions to dismiss the case, all of which Judge Caprio had denied. Now they were here, and Hutchins looked like he wanted to be anywhere else. As Victoria approached the bench, Judge Caprio studied her carefully. He'd seen thousands of defendants walk through his courtroom over his decades on the bench. He could read people in seconds, the nervous ones, the guilty ones, the remorseful ones, the ones who'd made genuine mistakes, and the ones who thought they were above the law. What he saw in Victoria Ashford wasn't nervousness or remorse. It was contempt. Pure, undisguised contempt for the process, for the court, and for everyone in it. "Mrs. Ashford," Judge Caprio began, his tone measured and professional. "You're here today charged with reckless driving, leaving the scene of an accident, and failure to report property damage. Do you understand these charges?" Victoria shifted her weight and let out a small, incredulous laugh. Not a nervous laugh, a dismissive one. "Your Honor, with all due respect, I think this is being blown completely out of proportion. I barely touched the car. It was a tap. Honestly, I didn't even realize I'd made contact until I saw the police report." Her lawyer visibly winced. They'd clearly discussed her not speaking unless spoken to. Judge Caprio raised his eyebrows. "You didn't realize you'd made contact. Mrs. Ashford, according to the police report, the impact left a 14-inch scrape on your Bentley and caused nearly $4,000 in damage to the other vehicle. That's quite a tap." She waved her hand dismissively, her diamond bracelet catching the fluorescent lights. "I've seen the photos. That car was already falling apart." "It's ancient. Honestly, I probably did her a favor. Maybe now she'll get something newer, something safer for her children." The courtroom went completely silent. People in the gallery exchanged shocked glances. Someone gasped audibly. Even Victoria's own attorney closed his eyes and grimaced, his hand moving to his forehead. You could feel the temperature in the room drop 10 degrees. The court stenographer actually stopped typing for a moment, her mouth slightly open in disbelief. Judge Caprio leaned back in his chair, his expression unreadable. He folded his hands on the bench in front of him. When he spoke, his voice was dangerously quiet. "You did her a favor?" "Well," Victoria continued, completely oblivious to the hole she was digging herself into. "I mean, these things happen. Accidents happen every day. I have insurance." "She has insurance. That's what insurance is for, right? I don't understand why I had to come all the way down here for something so trivial. My husband and I donate thousands to this city every year. We're on the board of 3 different charities. We just funded a new wing at the Children's Hospital." There it was. The entitlement laid bare for everyone to see. The implicit message: I'm important. I'm generous. I'm above this. Judge Caprio removed his glasses slowly and placed them on the bench. He picked up a pen, turned it over in his hands, then set it down. When he spoke, his voice was quiet, but every word carried the weight of decades of experience, seeing every kind of person walk through his doors. "Mrs. Ashford, I want you to help me understand something. You hit a parked car. You caused significant damage. And then you drove away without leaving your information. Why?" Victoria shrugged, actually shrugged, in a courtroom. "I was late for a charity luncheon. I didn't think it was that big of a deal. Besides, with my license plate, I knew they'd find me anyway if they really needed to. It's not like I was trying to hide." "If they really needed to," Judge Caprio repeated slowly, letting each word hang in the air. "So you left it up to the victim, a working mother, to do the work of tracking you down, filing police reports, and fighting with insurance companies, all because you were late for lunch?" For the first time, a flicker of uncertainty crossed Victoria's face. But she recovered quickly, her armor of privilege snapping back into place. "Your Honor, I really don't see what the issue is here. I'm willing to pay a fine. Whatever the amount is, it's not a problem. Just tell me the number and I'll write a check right now. Can we just settle this and move on? I have an appointment at 2:30. My stylist is flying in from New York." That's when Judge Caprio did something that stunned the entire courtroom. He stood up. In all his years on the bench, people who'd been in his courtroom regularly said they could count on one hand the number of times they'd seen him stand during a hearing. "Bailiff," he said, his voice calm but commanding, "please bring Ms. Santos into the courtroom." Victoria's face went pale. "What? Why?" That's not... My attorney said she wouldn't be here today. Your attorney was mistaken, Judge Caprio said. Because, Mrs. Ashford, this isn't about you paying a fine and moving on. This is about you understanding the real-world impact of your actions, something you seem entirely disconnected from, something your money has apparently insulated you from understanding. The courtroom doors opened, and Maria Santos walked in. She was wearing her nursing scrubs, light blue, slightly wrinkled from a long shift. She'd come directly from the hospital where she'd just finished a 12-hour shift. She looked exhausted. Dark circles under her eyes, hair pulled back in a simple ponytail. She looked like someone who'd been running on empty for weeks. She looked like someone who didn't have the luxury of stylists flying in from New York. Judge Caprio gestured toward Maria with a gentle wave of his hand. Ms. Santos, please approach the bench. Mrs. Ashford, I want you to look at this woman. Really look at her. Not past her. Not through her. At her. Victoria glanced at Maria, then quickly looked away, suddenly finding the floor very interesting. No, Judge Caprio said firmly. Look at her. This is the woman whose life you disrupted. The woman you said you did a favor for. Victoria reluctantly raised her eyes. For just a moment, the two women locked gazes. Maria's expression wasn't angry. It was tired, resigned. The look of someone who'd been knocked down by life so many times that one more hit barely registered. Ms. Santos, Judge Caprio continued, his voice softening. Can you tell the court what happened after your car was damaged? Please, take your time. Maria's voice was soft but steady. She'd been raised to be respectful, to not make waves, to accept what life handed her without complaint. But something in Judge Caprio's kind eyes gave her permission to speak her truth. I couldn't drive it, Your Honor. The wheel alignment was completely off, and the door wouldn't close properly. Every time I tried to drive it, it pulled hard to the left. I was scared I'd cause an accident, maybe hurt someone. So I had to take 3 buses to get to work every day, each way. That's 6 hours a day just commuting because I couldn't afford to miss work while I waited for the insurance to process. 6 hours, Judge Caprio repeated. And how long did that take? 2 weeks, Your Honor. 14 days. And then I still had to pay the $1,000 deductible, which I didn't have. I had to borrow it from my mother, who's 68 years old and living on Social Security. She gave me her rent money. I'm still trying to pay her back. Judge Caprio nodded slowly. What else happened during those 2 weeks? Maria's voice cracked slightly. I missed my son's school play. He was the lead. He'd been practicing for 2 months. I left work as fast as I could, but the buses... I got there right as it ended. He cried. He asked me why I didn't come, why I didn't care about him. She wiped her eyes quickly, embarrassed to be showing emotion. And my daughter? She's 7. She got in trouble at school because she kept falling asleep in class. She was staying up late waiting for me to get home because she was scared. My mother can't always hear her if she has nightmares. Victoria's face had gone from pale to flushed. Her hands were trembling slightly. The smirk was long gone. Judge Caprio turned back to Victoria. Mrs. Ashford, while you were at your charity luncheon, what was it for, by the way? Victoria's voice came out as barely a whisper. It was for underprivileged children. For underprivileged children, Judge Caprio repeated, and there was no mistaking the irony in his tone. While you were at a luncheon for underprivileged children, Ms. Santos here was figuring out how to get to work to take care of other people's sick relatives. While you were concerned about a scratch on your $300,000 Bentley, she was worried about losing her job, about disappointing her children, about how to pay back her elderly mother. He paused, letting that sink in. While you were having your hair styled and your nails done, she was falling asleep on buses. While you were annoyed about having to come to court, she was explaining to a 7-year-old why mommy couldn't be there for her nightmares. Do you understand now why this isn't trivial? Victoria's face had gone from pale to flushed to something else entirely. Shame. Raw, undisguised shame. I didn't know. You didn't know because you didn't stop to find out, Judge Caprio interrupted, his voice rising slightly for the first time. You didn't leave a note. You didn't call the police. You didn't do the basic, decent thing that any responsible driver would do. And when you came into my courtroom today, you laughed. You minimized. You acted like this woman's struggle was beneath your concern. You said you did her a favor. The judge let that sit in the air for a long moment. The silence was deafening. You could hear the clock ticking on the wall. Someone coughed in the gallery. The court reporter's fingers hovered over her keyboard, waiting. Mrs. Ashford, do you know what the average nurse's aide makes in Rhode Island? Victoria shook her head mutely. About $32,000 a year, before taxes. Ms. Santos has 2 children to feed, clothe, and house on that salary. Your necklace, he gestured to the diamonds around her neck. That necklace you're wearing right now could probably feed her family for 2 years. And you told her you did her a favor by destroying her only means of getting to the job that keeps her family afloat. Victoria's hand moved unconsciously to her necklace. She looked like she wanted to rip it off and throw it away. Judge Caprio stood up straighter. Now here's what's going to happen. I'm fining you $2,500 for leaving the scene of an accident. I could fine you more. The maximum is $5,000. But that money isn't going to the court. It's going directly to Ms. Santos to cover her deductible, her lost time at work, her bus fares for those 2 weeks, and the interest-free loan she had to take from her elderly mother. Victoria's lawyer stood up. Your Honor, if I may object to the... Judge Caprio held up a hand. Counselor, sit down. I'm not finished. And if you interrupt me again, I'll hold you in contempt. The lawyer sat down immediately. Mrs. Ashford, you mentioned that you and your husband donate to the city. That's commendable. But let me tell you something about charity that you clearly don't understand. Charity isn't just about writing checks to feel good about yourself. It's not about your name on a hospital wing or a table at a gala where you can wear expensive jewelry and take pictures for society pages. He walked around from behind the bench, something he almost never did. He stood directly in front of Victoria, eye to eye. Real charity is about recognizing the humanity in people you'll never meet at those galas. It's about understanding that your actions have consequences that ripple out far beyond your world of luxury cars and charity luncheons and stylists flying in from New York. It's about seeing a beat-up Honda Civic and understanding that to someone, that car means everything. It means getting to work. It means feeding their children. It means dignity. Victoria was crying now, tears streaming down her carefully made-up face, leaving tracks through her foundation. You're also going to complete 80 hours of community service. Not 40, 80, and not at one of your fundraisers, not at a benefit dinner where you wear designer gowns and sip champagne. You're going to work at the Rhode Island Community Food Bank, where you'll meet people who are struggling every single day to put food on their tables. People who would consider Maria's problems a luxury because at least she has a car to repair. At least she has a job to get to. He paused, then continued. You'll also spend another 40 hours shadowing Ms. Santos at work, if she'll allow it. You'll see what a 12-hour shift looks like. You'll see what it means to care for dying patients, to comfort grieving families, to clean bedpans and change sheets and hold the hand of someone who has no one else. You'll take those 3 buses with her. You'll understand what 6 hours of commuting feels like when you're exhausted. Victoria looked at Maria, her voice breaking. Would you let me do that? Maria looked surprised to be asked. She glanced at Judge Caprio, who nodded encouragingly. I suppose so, if you really want to. And finally, Judge Caprio said, you're going to write 3 letters. One to Ms. Santos, apologizing and explaining what you've learned. One to her children, explaining why their mother had to miss that school play and couldn't be there for those nightmares. and one to her mother, explaining why you put a 68-year-old woman on Social Security in a position where she had to give up her rent money to help her daughter. He looked directly at Victoria, his expression softer now but no less serious. These won't be lawyers' letters. Not something your PR team drafts. Real, handwritten letters where you explain in your own words what you've learned from this experience. And Ms. Santos and her family get to decide whether they accept your apologies. You don't get to demand forgiveness. You have to earn it. Victoria nodded, unable to speak. Judge Caprio walked back behind his bench but remained standing. Mrs. Ashford, I don't think you're a bad person. I think you're a person who's become so insulated from the real world that you've forgotten what it means to be accountable. You've forgotten that every person has struggles you know nothing about. You've forgotten that kindness isn't about grand gestures and tax-deductible donations. It's about stopping when you hit someone's car. It's about leaving a note. It's about doing the right thing when no one's watching and there's nothing in it for you. He sat down, put his glasses back on, and looked at her with an expression that somehow managed to be both stern and compassionate. This is your wake-up call. What you do with it is up to you. You can write your checks, do your hours, and go back to your bubble, having learned nothing. Or you can actually open your eyes and see the world as it really is for most people. The choice is yours. Victoria wiped her eyes with a tissue her lawyer handed her. Yes, Your Honor, I understand. And I want to learn. I want to do better. Judge Caprio turned to Maria. Ms. Santos, I apologize that you had to go through this ordeal. But I want you to know that your dignity and your perseverance in the face of this injustice speaks volumes about your character. Your children are lucky to have you as a mother. This court sees you. This court values you. And anyone who doesn't recognize your worth isn't worth your time. Maria smiled through her tears, her hands clasped in front of her. Thank you, Your Honor. Thank you for listening. As the hearing concluded and Victoria prepared to leave the courtroom, something unexpected happened. She turned to Maria, who was gathering her things to leave. Ms. Santos, Victoria called out, her voice still shaky. Please wait. Maria stopped, turning around cautiously. Victoria approached her, and for a moment, the two women stood there, separated by millions of dollars, by completely different worlds, but connected by this moment of accountability. Ms. Santos, I'm so sorry. Truly, deeply sorry. What I did was wrong, and what I said today was even worse. I'd like to pay for your repairs completely, not just the deductible, but the entire amount. And I'll cover your lost wages for those 2 weeks. It's the least I can do. Maria looked stunned. You don't have to do that. The judge already... I know I don't have to, Victoria interrupted, her voice breaking again. But I want to. And if you'll let me, I'd like to volunteer at the food bank beyond my community service hours. I think I have a lot to learn. Actually, I know I have a lot to learn. She paused, looking down at her hands. And I want to pay your mother back, with interest. She shouldn't have had to give up her rent money because of my selfishness. Maria's eyes filled with tears. That's very kind of you. It's not kind, Victoria said. It's basic human decency. Something I forgot somewhere along the way. Judge Caprio watched this exchange with a slight smile. This was why he did what he did. Not to humiliate people, but to wake them up. To remind them of their shared humanity. To show them that the law isn't just about punishment. It's about restoration, about healing, about growth. The video of this case went viral within days, racking up over 20 million views in the first week alone. People were captivated not just by Victoria's initial arrogance, but by her visible transformation in real time. The comments section was flooded with thousands of stories from people who'd been humbled by their own wake-up calls, people who'd learned lessons the hard way, people who'd been Maria and people who'd been Victoria. But here's the part that didn't make the viral video. the part that most people don't know. 3 months later, Victoria Ashford returned to Judge Caprio's courtroom, not as a defendant, but as a visitor. She'd completed not 80 hours at the food bank, but 200 hours. She'd spent those 40 hours shadowing Maria, riding those buses, seeing what real work looked like. And she'd continued volunteering long after her community service was complete. She and Maria had become unlikely friends. Real friends. Victoria had been there when Maria's daughter performed in her next school play. She'd helped Maria's son with his homework. She'd taken Maria's mother to doctor's appointments, not for show, not for social media posts, not for credit, just because it was the right thing to do. And she'd started a foundation called Second Chances Auto Fund to help working families with emergency car repairs. In the first year, it had helped 200 families keep their cars running, keep their jobs, keep their dignity. Maria was on the board. On this visit to the courtroom, Victoria brought Judge Caprio a letter. He read it right there, and tears filled his eyes. She'd written about how that day had changed her life, how she'd been sleepwalking through her privilege, disconnected from reality, how she'd raised her children to believe they were special, without teaching them that everyone is special, everyone has value, everyone deserves respect. She wrote about taking her teenage daughter to volunteer at the food bank and how they'd served a woman who'd been her daughter's teacher years ago, how her daughter had come home and cried, realizing that the teacher who'd been so kind to her had been struggling to feed herself, how that had shattered her daughter's worldview in the best possible way. She wrote about learning Maria's story, really learning it, about Maria's abusive ex-husband who'd left her with nothing, about Maria's own mother who'd escaped a war-torn country with nothing but her children and the clothes on their backs, about resilience and strength and grace under pressure. Judge Caprio later said in an interview, "People think justice is about punishment. Sometimes it is. But the best kind of justice is the kind that transforms people." Victoria Ashford walked into my courtroom as someone who'd lost touch with reality. She walked out as someone who finally understood that money doesn't make you better than anyone. Character does. And she made the choice to develop that character. He paused in that interview, choosing his words carefully. I've been a judge for over 35 years. I've seen thousands of cases. But the ones that stay with me aren't the ones where I threw the book at someone. They're the ones where I saw a light turn on, where someone finally understood. Victoria Ashford could have written her checks and walked away unchanged, but she didn't. She let herself be changed, and that's rare. That's precious. This case reminds us that empathy isn't something you're born with, it's something you choose every single day. Victoria chose wrong when she drove away from that accident. She chose wrong when she laughed in that courtroom, but she chose right when she listened, learned, and changed. And Maria? She chose grace. She chose to give someone a second chance. She chose to see the humanity in someone who'd failed to see hers. That's its own kind of strength. This is what Judge Caprio's courtroom is really about. It's not about tickets and fines and regulations and legal technicalities. It's about holding up a mirror and asking people, who do you want to be? Because at the end of the day, we all stand before a judge, whether it's in a courtroom or in our own conscience. And the verdict we receive depends on the choices we make when no one's watching, when it would be easier to drive away, when it would be convenient to let someone else deal with our mess, when we could hide behind our money or our status or our busy schedules. If you want to see more moments of accountability, transformation, and justice with compassion, subscribe to All Rise. We bring you the cases that remind us all that it's never too late to become a better person. That change is possible. That one moment of honesty, one moment of accountability, can redirect the entire course of a life. Drop a comment below. Have you ever had a moment that completely changed your perspective on life? Have you been Maria, wronged and choosing grace? Have you been Victoria, needing a wake-up call? Share your story. We all need reminders that growth is possible, that people can change, that the world isn't divided into good people and bad people, but into people who are trying and people who've given up trying. And remember, the next time you have the choice between convenience and doing the right thing, ask yourself, what would Judge Caprio see in me? Be someone who stops, someone who takes responsibility, someone who recognizes the humanity in every person you encounter, someone who understands that how we treat people when they can't do anything for us, that's who we really are. Be the person who leaves a note, who makes the call, who says I'm sorry and means it, who understands that every person you meet is fighting a battle you know nothing about, who chooses kindness not because it's easy, but because it's right. Thanks for watching, and always remember, we all rise together when we lift each other up, when we choose to see each other, when we choose accountability over convenience, when we choose to be better than we were yesterday. That's what Judge Caprio teaches us every single day in that courtroom. That's what Maria taught Victoria. And that's what we can teach each other, if we're brave enough to listen. See you in the next one.